I stared at my parents' will in their lawyer's office, my hands shaking as I read the words that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. The beach house in Malibu, the retirement accounts, Dad's vintage car collection, the investment portfolio I helped build, Mom's jewelry, even the family cabin in Big Bear. All of it went to Brandon, our cousin. Not split between us, all to him. The cousin they'd always joked was their real son because he played college football while I chose spreadsheets over sports. I thought they were kidding. My name is Desmond Parker, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a financial analyst at Brennan & Associates in downtown Los Angeles, analyzing investment portfolios and corporate mergers for clients who trust me with millions of dollars. I've never been married, never really had time for serious relationships. I always told myself that family came first, that there would be time for my own life later. Looking back now, I realize how foolish that sounds. Growing up, our family gatherings always revolved around Brandon Mitchell, my cousin. He was 3 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, he was the one everyone watched. At Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas parties, 4th of July barbecues at my parents' house in Pasadena, Brandon was the star. He played quarterback at USC, dated cheerleaders, and had that easy charm that made everyone in the room lean in when he talked. My parents would light up when he walked through the door, like someone had turned on a switch. I was the other kid at those gatherings, the quiet one in the corner with a book, the one who got straight A's, but never quite understood why that didn't seem to matter as much. When Brandon threw the winning touchdown in his high school championship game, my parents drove 2 hours to watch and talked about it for months. When I graduated summa cum laude from UCLA, they came to the ceremony but left early because Dad had a golf game. They made jokes constantly. At family dinners, Mom would say things like, "Brandon's the son we wished we had," or Dad would laugh and tell his friends, "At least Brandon gave us something to brag about at the country club." My aunts and uncles would chuckle uncomfortably, and I would force myself to smile, telling myself it was just their sense of humor. They were kidding, right? Parents don't actually mean things like that. But sitting in Gerald's office, the family attorney who'd known us for 20 years, staring at the legal documents that proved they absolutely did mean it, I felt something inside me crack open. Gerald had called me in for what he described as a routine estate planning review. My parents were both in their early 60s, healthy enough, but they wanted to update their paperwork. "Standard procedure," Head said on the phone. The reading took 15 minutes. Gerald's voice was steady and professional as he went through each asset, each account, each piece of property. Beach house in Malibu, approximately $2.3 million, to Brandon Mitchell. Investment portfolio, approximately $800,000, to Brandon Mitchell. Vintage car collection, estimated value $400,000, to Brandon Mitchell. The family cabin in Big Bear, the jewelry, the savings accounts, everything, all to Brandon. I sat there in the leather chair across from Gerald's mahogany desk, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows overlooking Wilshire Boulevard, and I couldn't speak. My throat felt like someone had filled it with concrete. Gerald wouldn't meet my eyes. He shuffled papers, cleared his throat, adjusted his glasses. Finally, he said, "Desmond, I want you to know that I advised against this distribution. I told your parents that it was unusual and potentially problematic. But they were insistent." I managed to ask, "When did they change it?" "6 months ago," Gerald said quietly. "They came in together, both of them, and they were very clear about what they wanted." That's when Gerald did something that probably violated some kind of attorney-client privilege. But I think his conscience couldn't bear it. He reached into the folder and pulled out a handwritten note on my father's personal stationery, the cream-colored paper with his initials embossed at the top. He slid it across the desk to me. "Your father asked me to keep this with the will," Gerald said. "I think he wanted you to understand their reasoning." I picked up the note with trembling fingers. My father's handwriting, the same precise script Head used to sign my report cards and birthday cards for 32 years, filled half the page. "Brandon understands what it means to make us proud. He took risks. You played it safe. This is our final lesson to you about being a real man." I read it 3 times. Each word felt like a small knife sliding between my ribs. Not just the inheritance, not just the money and property, but this casual cruelty, this final verdict on my entire existence, delivered in my father's careful handwriting. "You played it safe," Not a real man. Our final lesson. I stood up, my legs somehow still working despite the numbness spreading through my body. I folded the note carefully and put it in my pocket. Gerald started to say something. Maybe an apology or some legal disclaimer. But I was already walking toward the door. "Thank you for your time," I said. And my voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. I walked out of that office, into the bright Los Angeles afternoon, past the other attorneys and secretaries, past the elevator, down 8 flights of stairs, because I couldn't stand the thought of being trapped in a small box, and out onto the street. I stood on the corner of Wilshire and Westwood, watching people rush past me, everyone heading somewhere important, everyone with purpose. And I realized that for 32 years, I had been living my life trying to earn something that was never going to be given to me. That evening, I sat in my apartment in downtown Los Angeles, a one-bedroom place on the 14th floor with a view of the city skyline. I'd lived here for 8 years, ever since I moved back from New York. I'd been working at a hedge fund in Manhattan, making good money, building a career that was finally mine. Then Dad had his stroke. It happened on a Tuesday morning in March. Mom called me at 6 in the morning, New York time, her voice high and panicked. "Your father collapsed at the gym. They're taking him to Huntington Hospital. You need to come home." I was on a plane that afternoon. The stroke wasn't massive, but it was significant enough that Dad couldn't work anymore. Had been a commercial real estate broker. The kind of job that required constant networking, presentations, client meetings. After the stroke, he had weakness on his left side, slurred speech when he was tired, and gaps in his memory that terrified him. He tried to go back to work after 3 months, but he couldn't do it. The clients noticed, the deals fell through, and eventually, his firm gently suggested early retirement. That's when I made what I thought was a temporary decision. I told my boss in New York that I needed to relocate to Los Angeles to help my parents. They offered me a position at their Los Angeles office, but it was a step down. Less money, fewer opportunities. I took it anyway because that's what good sons do, right? You take care of your parents. But the temporary situation became permanent. Dad's medical bills piled up even with insurance. Their mortgage on the house in Pasadena was steep because they'd refinanced twice to fund renovations and vacations. Mom didn't work. Never had. They'd built their lifestyle around Dad's income. And when that disappeared, everything started crumbling. So I stepped in. I started transferring money every month. At first, it was $3,000 to help with the mortgage. Then it became $4,000 to cover the property taxes and insurance. Then it grew to $6,000 because there were medical expenses, car payments, utilities, the country club membership that Dad refused to give up because what would people think, the housekeeper who came twice a week, the gardener, all the little pieces of the life they'd built. I sat at my desk that evening and opened my banking app. I pulled up 8 years of transaction history, exported it to a spreadsheet, and started adding up the numbers. Every month, $6,000, multiplied by 12 months, multiplied by 8 years. The total made me feel sick. $647,000. Over $500,000 of my own money, transferred from my account to theirs, keeping their life afloat while mine stayed on hold. It delayed buying my own home because I couldn't afford a down payment while sending them $6,000 every month. It turned down a job offer in Seattle 2 years ago that would have bumped my salary by 40% because how could I leave when they needed me? It'd broken up with a woman I really cared about because she wanted to move to San Diego for her career, and I told her I couldn't leave Los Angeles. Couldn't leave my parents. And Brandon? Brandon had moved to Austin 5 years ago for what he called a startup opportunity. Some tech company that was going to revolutionize something or other. It failed within 18 months. Then there was another startup. Some kind of app. That failed too. Then a cryptocurrency venture. Also failed. But Brandon always landed on his feet. He'd show up at family gatherings twice a year, Christmas and Thanksgiving, driving whatever flashy car had leased that month, bringing expensive wine, and telling stories about his next big thing. My parents' eyes would light up when he walked in. Look at Brandon. So entrepreneurial. Such a risk taker. So exciting. Meanwhile, I was just there. Dependable Desmond. Boring Desmond. The son who paid their bills but didn't make them proud. I stared at that number on my screen. $647,000. Then I looked at the will sitting on my coffee table, and I looked at my father's note, still in my pocket. This is our final lesson to you about being a real man. I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic monthly transfer. Just clicked a button, confirmed the cancellation, and it was done. No fanfare, no announcement, no explanation. I simply stopped. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I went to work, came home, went to the gym, ate dinner alone, and went to bed. My life continued in its quiet, predictable rhythm. I took on a major project at work, analyzing a corporate merger for a client, diving into financial statements and market research with an intensity that made my colleague Rachel ask if I was okay. "You're working 16-hour days," she said, standing at my cubicle with concern in her eyes. "That's excessive even for you." "I'm fine," I told her. "Just focused." She invited me to lunch. I declined. She tried again the next day. I declined again. Rachel was a good person, someone who'd been friendly since I started at Brennan and Associates. But I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to explain. I just wanted to work until I was too exhausted to think. Week 3 arrived. I was in the middle of a presentation to a client, showing slides about market volatility and projected returns, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Finally, during a break, I checked my messages. The text was from Mom. No greeting, no how are you, no acknowledgement that we hadn't spoken since the will reading 3 weeks ago. Just 4 words. Transfer the money for the mortgage. I stared at that text while standing in the conference room, my laptop open, my presentation half finished. Transfer the money for the mortgage. Not a request, a command, an expectation that I would simply comply, that I would keep being the ATM, keep funding their life, while they left everything to Brandon. I went back to my presentation, finished the meeting, shook hands with the client, and walked to my car in the parking garage. I sat behind the wheel in the dim concrete space, my phone in my hand, staring at that message. I typed a response, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Finally, I typed one word. No. My finger hovered over the send button. Part of me, the part that had been trained for 32 years to be the good son, the responsible one, the one who always came through, wanted to delete it, wanted to apologize, explain, smooth things over. But another part of me, the part that had been growing since I read that will, since I saw my father's note, that part hit send. The word sat there on my screen, delivered. Read. I turned off my phone and drove home. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. I didn't dream, didn't wake up at 3 in the morning with anxiety twisting my stomach. I just slept, deep and dreamless, and when I woke up the next morning, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt light. That feeling lasted exactly 12 hours. When I got home from work that evening, there was a certified letter taped to my apartment door. I signed for it from the building manager, went inside, and opened it with a sense of dread that proved entirely justified. The letter was from a law firm I didn't recognize, Palmer and Associates, representing Richard and Margaret Parker, my parents. The letter was 2 pages of legal language that boiled down to a simple threat. I was being accused of financial elder abuse and breach of oral contract. The letter claimed that I had promised to support my parents for life, that they had relied on this promise in making their financial decisions, and that my sudden cessation of payments constituted abandonment and abuse. They demanded that I resume payments immediately or face legal action and, the letter specifically noted, public exposure of my neglectful behavior. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First shock, then disbelief, then a cold, burning anger that settled in my chest and didn't move. They were threatening to sue me, to publicly humiliate me, to claim that I, the son who had given them over $500,000, who had put my own life on hold for 8 years, was abusing and abandoning them. I called Rachel. I don't know why I called her instead of a lawyer first, but she was the only person I could think of who might understand. She answered on the second ring. "Desmond, are you okay? You sound terrible." "I need a lawyer," I said. "A good one. Family law." There was a pause. Then she said, "Come to my place. I'll make some calls." An hour later, I was sitting in Rachel's apartment in Santa Monica, drinking coffee I couldn't taste while she made phone calls to attorney friends. By 9 that night, she had a name and number. Patricia Chen, family law specialist, tough as nails, doesn't lose. I called Patricia the next morning. Her secretary scheduled an emergency consultation for that afternoon. I took a half day from work and drove to her office in Century City. Patricia Chen was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She listened to my story without interrupting, took notes, and when I finished, she leaned back in her chair and actually laughed. Oral contract, elder abuse. Mr. Parker, you've been their ATM for 8 years, not their abuser. This is intimidation, pure and simple. They're trying to bully you into compliance. Can they win? I asked. No, she said flatly. But they can make your life miserable for a while. Legal battles are expensive and exhausting even when you're right. My advice? Document everything. Every transfer. Every conversation. Every text message. We're going to build a paper trail that shows exactly what kind of people your parents are. I spent the next week doing exactly what Patricia advised. I created a spreadsheet that would have made my professional clients proud. 8 years of bank statements. Every transfer itemized with date, amount, and purpose. Mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance premiums, medical bills, country club dues, car payments, even grocery deliveries. The numbers climbed higher than ID calculated before. Not 647,000, 673,000. Once I included the irregular payments, the emergency transfers, the times Mom called and said they needed an extra $2,000 for something. $673,000 over 8 years. Patricia looked at the spreadsheet during our second meeting and whistled low. This is leverage, she said. Your parents want to claim you abandoned them? Well, show a judge that you funded their entire lifestyle for nearly a decade while they systematically favored another family member. But the spreadsheet wasn't the worst part of that week. The worst part was my phone. It started with a text from Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. Desmond, how could you abandon your parents like this? After everything they've done for you? You should be ashamed. Then Uncle Rick, Dad's brother. Your father is crying every night. He says you've turned your back on the family. Be a man and take care of your responsibilities. Then came the family group chat, the one Wed used for years to coordinate holidays and birthdays. Someone, probably my mother, had told everyone about my refusal to keep paying. The messages came fast and furious. Cousin Jennifer, Brandon told us you're jealous of him. This is so petty and pathetic. Aunt Sarah, I can't believe you do this to your own parents. What's wrong with you? Uncle Tom, family takes care of family. You're breaking your mother's heart. Message after message, each one cutting a little deeper. Nobody asked my side of the story. Nobody wondered why Id stopped paying or what might have happened. They just accepted the narrative my parents had fed them. Desmond, the ungrateful son. Desmond, the abandoner. Desmond, the villain. I watched the messages pile up and didn't respond. What could I say that they'd believe? The family had already chosen sides, and it wasn't mine. The only person who stayed silent was my younger sister, Emma. She lived in Boston, worked as a consultant for a tech firm, and Wed always been close despite the distance. Her silence in the group chat felt deliberate, and after 3 days, she called me. I'm not weighing in on the group chat because I don't want to deal with the backlash, she said without preamble. But I need to know what's really happening. I told her everything, the will, the note, the 8 years of payments, the threat of a lawsuit. Emma listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long silence on the line. Finally, she said, I got nothing either. What? In the will. I got $5,000. That's it. Everything else goes to Brandon. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Emma, she laughed, but it was bitter. I paid for Mom's surgery 2 years ago. Remember when she needed that procedure and insurance only covered part of it? I wrote a check for $15,000. They said they'd pay me back. They never did. And now I know why. They were saving everything for Brandon. We talked for 2 hours that night, comparing notes, piecing together a pattern we'd both been too close to see. Emma had helped with medical bills. Shed paid for repairs on the house when the roof leaked. Shed sent money for holidays and birthdays. always generous, always hoping that maybe this time they'd acknowledge her the way they acknowledged Brandon. They trained us, Emma said. They trained us to be the dependable ones, the ones who show up and pay and handle things. And they trained the family to see that as our obligation. Meanwhile, Brandon got to be the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. What are you going to do? I asked. Already did it, she said. I stopped sending money after I saw the will. They haven't noticed yet because you've been covering everything. But once your payments stopped, I'm guessing they're scrambling. We should meet, I said. In person. Compare notes properly, Emma agreed. She was flying to Los Angeles the following week for a work conference. We made plans to have dinner. 3 days before Emma's arrival, something happened that changed everything. I received a Facebook friend request from someone named Andrew Chen. The profile picture showed a man who looked to be in his early 40s, Asian American, with kind eyes and a warm smile. I didn't recognize him, and I was about to ignore the request when I saw the message attached. I think we need to talk about your father. I'm his son from his first marriage. I didn't know I had siblings until I saw your sister's name on an ancestry DNA match. Your parents told my mother they never wanted to see me again 30 years ago. I was 7. I stared at that message for a full minute, reading it over and over, trying to make sense of the words. His son from his first marriage. I didn't know my father had been married before my mother. Nobody had ever mentioned it. Not once in 32 years. I accepted the friend request and sent a reply. Can you talk now? Within minutes, my phone rang. I answered, and a calm, measured voice said, Hi Desmond, I'm Andrew. I'm sorry to contact you like this out of the blue. I've been debating it for weeks. Tell me everything, I said. Andrew's story came out slowly, carefully, like he'd practiced it but still found it painful. His mother, Diane Chen, had married my father when they were both 23. Young love, impulsive, probably doomed from the start. They had Andrew 2 years later. The marriage lasted 5 years total before falling apart. My father got a high-paying job at a real estate firm, met my mother at a company party, and decided he wanted a fresh start. A new wife, a new family, a new life. Diane had struggled financially after the divorce. She worked as a teacher, raising Andrew on her own, and occasionally reached out to my father for child support. My father's response, according to Andrew, was to have his parents, my grandparents, pay Diane a lump sum of $50,000 on the condition that she never contact the family again. She took the money because she was desperate, and my father got what he wanted. Erasure. Andrew didn't exist. He was the inconvenient remnant of a past my father wanted forgotten. I grew up thinking my dad just didn't want me, Andrew said quietly. My mom never said anything bad about him. She just said they'd made an agreement. I assumed that meant he was a deadbeat. You know? Someone who walked away from his kid. It wasn't until I was older that she told me about the payoff. How did you find us? I asked. My wife got me a 2-3-and-me kit for Christmas, Andrew said. I wasn't really that interested, but she thought it would be fun. The results came back, showing a close match with someone named Emma Parker, half-sister. I couldn't believe it. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but then I researched and found her online, found you. I've spent weeks trying to decide if I should reach out. I'm glad you did, I said, and I meant it. I told Andrew about the will, about the 8 years of payments, about Brandon, about everything. There was a long silence when I finished. Then Andrew laughed, and it was the same bitter laugh he'd heard from Emma. So he's doing it again, Andrew said, finding the perfect child and throwing away the rest. Some people never change. That night, Andrew and I video called for 3 hours. I saw his face properly for the first time, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the slight resemblance to my father that I wouldn't have noticed if I wasn't looking for it. He showed me pictures of his family, his wife Lisa, his 2 kids, ages 8 and 10. Had built a good life despite everything, working as an engineer for a renewable energy company in San Jose, coaching his son's Little League team, volunteering at his daughter's school. But underneath the success, I could hear the wound that had never quite healed. The knowledge that his father had chosen to erase him, to pretend he didn't exist, to build a new family and pour all his love into children who weren't the mistake. Except we weren't really the loved ones either, I told him. Emma and I were just the useful ones. The next day, I called Emma and set up a three-way video chat. When Andrew's face appeared on her screen next to mine, Emma gasped. "Oh my God," she said. "You look like Dad." "I know," Andrew said quietly. "I've seen pictures online." Emma and I filled Andrew in on what we'd learned about each other, and the three of us started piecing together a complete picture of our parents. Not the image they projected to the world, the successful couple with their perfect life, but the reality underneath. Control, image, status. Those were the things that mattered to them. Brandon represented what they wanted to show the world. Successful, athletic, charismatic, the kind of son they could brag about. Emma and I were useful, responsible, dependable, easy to exploit for money and labor. Andrew was an inconvenience from a past they wanted erased. "We're all just playing roles in their story," Emma said, "and the only person who got the lead role is Brandon." "What if we contest the will?" I suggested. "All three of us together?" Emma looked thoughtful. "Can we even do that?" I called Patricia the next morning and explained the situation. "Andrew is a legal heir," I told her. "Hess' dad's biological son, born during a legal marriage. He was cut out entirely, and he never received any support." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "This changes everything. If we can prove paternity and show that your parents have a pattern of cutting out children who don't meet their standards while funneling resources to a favored non-heir, we have a much stronger case." We set up a conference call with Patricia, myself, Emma, and Andrew. Patricia laid out the strategy. Contest the will on grounds of undue influence, and demonstrate financial exploitation. File for DNA testing to confirm Andrew's paternity. Subpoena financial records to trace where money went. Most importantly, file an emergency motion to freeze the estate during litigation. "What does that mean?" Andrew asked. "It means Brandon gets nothing until this is resolved," Patricia said. "And if your parents were relying on that inheritance to cover their debts, they're going to be in serious trouble." "How long could litigation take?" Emma asked. "Years," Patricia said bluntly. 2, 3, maybe longer if they fight hard. During that time, the estate is locked. No assets can be distributed, no property can be sold. Nothing moves. I thought about my parents' mortgage, their property taxes, their lifestyle. Without my $6,000 a month and without access to the estate they'd been counting on, they'd be drowning in debt within months. "Good," I said, and I was surprised by how cold my voice sounded. "Let them figure out how to survive without me." We filed the contest 2 days later. Patricia worked fast, assembling the paperwork, the evidence, the documentation. Andrew submitted to DNA testing, which proved paternity within a week. The court approved our motion to freeze the estate pending investigation of undue influence and financial impropriety. The family group chat exploded. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages, each one more furious than the last. How dare I? What was wrong with me? I was destroying the family. I was a disgrace. On and on, a tidal wave of anger and accusation. I muted the chat and didn't look back. 4 days after we filed the contest, Emma received a phone call from Wells Fargo. She was still listed as an emergency contact on our parents' accounts from years ago, when Shed helped them set up online banking. The bank manager, a man named David Sterling, sounded uncomfortable. "Miss Parker, I'm calling because there's been some unusual activity on your parents' accounts that I thought you should be aware of." "What kind of activity?" Emma asked. 3 months ago, your parents took out a home equity line of credit for $200,000. The funds were withdrawn in full 2 weeks later. I'm calling because the first payment is now overdue, and we've been unable to reach your parents." Emma put the call on speaker so I could hear. "Where did the money go?" she asked. "According to our records, it was transferred to an account owned by Brandon Mitchell. The memo line says business investment." Emma and I stared at each other across her laptop screen. $200,000. Taken out against the house had been helping pay the mortgage on for 8 years. Given to Brandon for a business investment that almost certainly failed like all his other ventures. "Thank you for letting us know," Emma said, her voice carefully neutral. When she hung up, we sat in silence for a long moment. Then Emma said, They were funneling him money while cutting us out of the will. They weren't just favoring him in death. They were setting him up while alive. Can we get the money back? Emma asked. We can try, Patricia said. I'll file a civil suit against Brandon for the return of funds obtained through fraudulent means. Even if we don't win, it'll tie him up in legal battles for years. Do it, I said. The lawsuit against Brandon was filed on a Wednesday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone was ringing. Dad. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail. Then Mom called. Voicemail. Then they called together from their landline. I finally answered. What? I said, not bothering with a greeting. You're destroying this family. My father's voice was shaking with rage, louder than I'd heard it in years. After everything we sacrificed for you, after we raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head, this is how you repay us? I felt something cold settle in my chest. You sacrificed nothing, I said quietly. I sacrificed everything. I gave you 8 years of my life and over $600,000. You gave Brandon everything and left me a note telling me I wasn't a real man. There was silence. Then my mother's voice, high and tearful. We're going to lose the house. The bank is threatening foreclosure. You're killing us. You took out a loan and gave it to Brandon, I said. That's not my problem. That's your choice. How did you know about that? Dad demanded. I know everything, I said. I know about the $200,000. I know about Andrew. I know exactly what kind of people you are. Andrew? Mom's voice went sharp. You've been talking to him? Hez my brother, I said. My actual brother. Not my cousin who you decided to adopt because he played football. That's different, Dad said. That was before you. That was a mistake we corrected. Hez a human being, I said. He was a 7-year-old child, and you paid his mother to disappear so you could pretend he didn't exist. We did what was best for our family, Mom said. No, I said. You did what was best for your image. And you're still doing it, but I'm done being part of that image. I'm done funding your life. I'm done pretending that what you did was okay. If you don't drop this lawsuit, we'll never speak to you again, Dad said. Good, I said, and hung up. My hands were shaking, but I felt clear, lighter. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe properly. The family group chat descended into chaos. Everyone had opinions. Everyone had solutions. The overwhelming consensus was that I was wrong. I was vindictive. I was destroying the family over money. Only a few people stayed quiet. Emma, obviously. Cousin Nathan, who'd always been kind. I'm also starting to see that maybe your parents have been lying to us about a lot of things. I'm sorry I came at you so hard. I didn't know the full story. Thank you, I said. And I meant it. Over the next few days, the narrative started to shift. Uncle Rick talked to other family members. Aunt Carol, who'd been quiet, revealed that my parents had borrowed $15,000 from her 5 years ago and never paid it back. Cousin Nathan mentioned that Brandon had promised to invest in his restaurant and then disappeared when it came time to actually put up money. The perfect image of Brandon started to crack. People began asking questions. Why did he need so much money if his businesses were successful? Why was he always borrowing and never paying back? Why did he deserve everything in the will when Head contributed nothing? Meanwhile, Patricia's case grew stronger. We had financial records showing my contributions. We had the home equity line of credit demonstrating that my parents had used funds I helped secure to benefit Brandon. We had Andrew's paternity test. We had testimony from family members about loans that were never repaid. We had my father's note proving that the will was based on favoritism rather than any rational estate planning. The court scheduled a mediation session for 6 weeks out. Patricia was confident. They'll try to settle, she said. Once they see the evidence, they'll know they can't win. The question is what kind of settlement you're willing to accept. I want the estate divided equally among legal heirs, I said. Me, Emma, and Andrew. Brandon gets nothing because he's not an heir. And I want Brandon to repay the $200,000. That's fair, Patricia said. Well, push for it. The week before the mediation, Brandon showed up drunk to a family barbecue at Aunt Linda's house. I wasn't there, but Emma was, and she called me immediately afterward. He lost it, she said, completely lost it. He was screaming about how ungrateful we were, how Wed always been jealous of him, how he deserved everything because he was the only one who made Mom and Dad proud. Aunt Linda tried to calm him down, and he threw his beer bottle at the fence. Uncle Rick physically removed him from the property. Did he say anything about the money? I asked. He said you were too weak to fight back and that he'd get everything anyway. Emma paused. Desmond, he's not well. I don't mean that as an excuse. I mean he genuinely seems unstable. That became clearer at the mediation. The session was held at a neutral office in downtown Los Angeles, a bland conference room with a long table and uncomfortable chairs. Patricia, Emma, Andrew, and I sat on one side. My parents, Brandon, and their attorney, a nervous man named Roger Hill, sat on the other. The mediator, a retired judge named Susan Blackwell, sat at the head of the table. The session was supposed to be calm and professional. It lasted 45 minutes before imploding. Brandon showed up 15 minutes late, reeking of alcohol. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. He slumped in his chair and glared at me across the table. Judge Blackwell started explaining the mediation process, the goal of finding common ground, the benefits of settling rather than going to trial. Brandon interrupted. This is bullshit, he said, his words slurring slightly. They're just jealous. They've always been jealous. Mr. Mitchell, please, Judge Blackwell said. This is not the time. They're boring, pathetic losers, Brandon continued, his voice rising. Aunt Margaret and Uncle Richard loved me because I'm worth loving. You, he pointed at me. You're nothing. You were always nothing. The room went silent. My mother was staring at her hands. My father's face was red. Their attorney looked like he wanted to disappear. Patricia was taking notes with a small smile. Mr. Mitchell, if you can't conduct yourself appropriately, you'll have to end this session, Judge Blackwell said. Brandon stood up, swaying slightly. You want to know the truth? He shouted. I played them. I told them exactly what they wanted to hear. I laughed at their stupid jokes and pretended to care about their boring stories. And they ate it up. They changed the will because I convinced them to. Because Desmond was too weak to fight back and I knew I could take everything. Mr. Mitchell, sit down, his attorney said urgently. But Brandon was on a roll. He turned to my parents. You're pathetic too, he said. You threw away your real kids because you were desperate to feel important. You wanted to brag about me at your stupid country club. Well, guess what? I never cared about you. I just wanted your money. My mother started crying. My father looked like he'd been slapped. Judge Blackwell stood up and declared the mediation over. Security escorted Brandon out. He was still yelling as they led him down the hallway. Patricia was grinning. That was the best thing that could have happened for our case, she said. He just confessed to undue influence in front of a mediator, both attorneys, and multiple witnesses. But the real breakthrough came 2 days later. Patricia received a call from a woman named Stephanie Grant. She identified herself as Brandon's ex-girlfriend from 3 years ago. Shed heard about the lawsuit through mutual friends and felt compelled to come forward. Stephanie had text messages, dozens of them, saved on her old phone, showing Brandon bragging about manipulating our parents, playing the old folks. Had written in one message, they're so desperate for a golden child, they'll believe anything. Desmond's too weak to fight back. He'll get everything, and hell get nothing. Stephanie agreed to testify. Patricia added her evidence to our file. The case went from strong to airtight. The trial was scheduled for 3 months out, but it never got that far. 2 weeks after the disastrous mediation, my parents' attorney contacted Patricia with a settlement offer. They wanted to talk. We met again, this time without Brandon. My parents looked smaller somehow, older and more fragile. The bravado was gone. They sat across from us with their attorney, who laid out their proposal. They would agree to an equal division of the estate among myself, Emma, and Andrew if we dropped the civil suit against Brandon and agreed not to pursue the $200,000. Patricia looked at me. Your call, she said. I thought about it. $200,000 was a lot of money, but pursuing it would mean years more of litigation, more stress, more connection to people I wanted out of my life. I'll agree on 3 conditions, I said. 1. The estate is divided equally 3 ways, not including Brandon. 2. They admit in writing that the original will was created under undue influence from Brandon, and that they were wrong. 3. Brandon is permanently barred from any claim to the estate or any future inheritance. My father started to object, but their attorney cut him off. Those terms are acceptable, he said quickly. The settlement was finalized a week later. The judge reviewed the agreement, approved it, and issued an order invalidating the original will. The estate would be divided equally among 3 legal heirs: Desmond Parker, Emma Parker, and Andrew Chen. Brandon had 30 days to repay the $200,000 to the estate or face fraud charges. He couldn't. He had to sell his car, his boat, and the Austin condo he'd put a down payment on. Even then, he could only scrape together $140,000. The court ordered a payment plan for the remaining $60,000, garnishing his wages for the next 5 years. His life imploded. Without the promised inheritance, without the financial cushion he'd been counting on, Brandon had nothing. He'd burned through every opportunity, every relationship, every chance. The family members he owed money to started demanding repayment. His reputation was destroyed. He moved back in with our parents temporarily, but that lasted less than a month before they kicked him out. Even they couldn't stand him anymore, now that they saw him clearly. I heard through Uncle Rick that Brandon moved to Florida eventually, working in sales, living paycheck to paycheck in a small apartment. He cut off contact with everyone in the family. I felt nothing when I heard that. Not satisfaction, not pity, just nothing. He'd made his choices, and now he lived with them. My parents' financial situation collapsed. The mortgage went into foreclosure because they couldn't make payments without my support or access to the estate. They had to sell the house, the one they'd lived in for 30 years. The one with the perfect backyard and the view of the San Gabriel Mountains. They sold it in a short sale, barely breaking even after paying off the mortgage and the home equity line of credit. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Glendale. It was clean and safe, but a far cry from their old life. No housekeeper, no gardener, no country club membership. They lived on Dad's pension and Social Security, budgeting carefully, cutting coupons, shopping at discount stores. The life they'd built on image and status and other people's money was gone, and through it all, they blamed me. My mother called Emma crying, saying I'd destroyed their lives. My father sent me an email, one final message, saying I'd proven him right. I wasn't a real man because a real man would have forgiven them and helped them anyway. I deleted the email without responding, but 6 months into their new reality, something shifted. My mother called and asked if we could talk. Just talk, no agenda, no demands. I almost said no. Emma encouraged me to hear her out. We met at a coffee shop in Pasadena, neutral territory. Mom looked different. Older, yes, but also softer somehow. The hard edges of pride and status had worn away. I'm not calling to ask for money, she said first. I know you won't give it. And I don't blame you. Okay, I said cautiously. I'm calling because your father and I have been in therapy. Emma suggested it, and we were desperate enough to try. We've been going twice a week for 3 months. Good, I said, meaning it. The therapist helped us see things we didn't want to see, about how we treated you and Emma, about Brandon, about Andrew. She didn't let us make excuses. Mom's hands were shaking around her coffee cup. We were wrong, Desmond. We were so wrong, and I don't know if I can ever make you understand how sorry I am. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. I don't expect you to, Mom said. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What we did, what we took from you, you deserved better. It wasn't the grand apology I'd fantasized about, the moment where everything made sense and healed. But it was real. It was a start. Over the next year, my parents and I built something new. Not the relationship we'd had before, which was based on obligation and unspoken resentment, but something honest. We had dinner once a month, always with Emma, and sometimes with Andrew. The conversations were awkward at first, stilted and careful. But gradually, they became easier. Dad started asking about my work with genuine interest. Not just polite questions. He wanted to understand what I did, why I found it meaningful. Mom sent me my favorite chocolate chip cookies on my birthday, something she used to do when I was a kid but had stopped years ago. They were small gestures, but they mattered because they came without expectation of reward. The therapy helped them understand their own patterns. Dad's father had been cold and demanding, showing love only to Dad's older brother who went to law school and made partner at a prestigious firm. Dad swore he'd never treat his kids that way, but instead, head overcorrected by picking a favorite and treating that favoritism as love. Mom grew up poor, clawing her way out through marriage, and she'd become obsessed with status and image. Brandon represented success to her in a way that my steady, quiet career never could. Understanding didn't erase the hurt, but it provided context. They weren't monsters. They were broken people who'd broken their children, and now they were trying, imperfectly and slowly, to glue some pieces back together. The breakthrough came a year after the settlement. We were at a family therapy session, one that included me, Emma, Andrew, and our parents. The therapist, Dr. Sarah Walsh, asked my father to talk about his relationship with each of his children. Dad was quiet for a long time. Then he said, his voice cracking, "I always knew Desmond was the better son. He was smarter, kinder, more responsible. But that terrified me because it reminded me of everything I wasn't at his age. I couldn't stand that he was better than me. Brandon was easy to love because he needed me, because I could feel superior to him while praising him. He made me feel good about myself. Desmond just made me feel inadequate." He looked at me, tears running down his face. "I punished you for being strong," he said. "I'm so sorry." Mom echoed similar feelings about Emma. She was threatened by Emma's independence, her success, her refusal to need constant validation. Loving Brandon was easy because it didn't challenge her. Loving her actual children required her to face her own insecurities. It was the first honest thing they'd ever said to us. It didn't erase decades of pain, but it opened a door. 2 years after I walked out of Gerald's office with that will in my hands, my life looks nothing like it did before. I sold the family house after it went through foreclosure and probate, buying it at auction for less than market value. I flipped it, making a tidy profit, and used that money as a down payment on my own place. A modern loft in downtown Los Angeles with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, exposed brick walls, and enough space to finally feel like mine. My parents live in their apartment in Glendale, a modest 2-bedroom place near the Americana. They're managing. Dad's health is stable. Mom volunteers at a local library, something she seems to genuinely enjoy. They have dinner with Emma, Andrew, and me once a month. Sometimes twice, if there's a birthday or holiday. The relationship isn't what I once wanted, that easy, unconditional love I craved as a kid. But it's real. We talk honestly now. They apologize when they slip into old patterns. I set boundaries and enforce them. It's not perfect, but it's functional. And that's more than I thought possible 2 years ago. Brandon disappeared. Last I heard through Uncle Rick, he's living in Tampa, working in car sales. Living in a small apartment with a roommate. Has not in touch with anyone in the family. I don't think about him much. The anger I felt has faded into indifference. He made his choices, burned his bridges, and now he lives with the consequences. I hope he finds peace someday, but that's not my responsibility. Emma is thriving. She started her own consulting firm in Boston, specializing in tech startups, and business is booming. She got engaged to her girlfriend Kate last Christmas, a beautiful woman who works as a physician's assistant and treats Emma like she's the most important person in the world. The wedding is planned for next fall in Martha's Vineyard, and I'm standing up as Emma's person of honor. Our relationship is stronger than ever. We talk twice a week, visit each other every few months, and text constantly. She's not just my sister anymore. She's my best friend. Andrew has become family in a way I never expected. We discovered we have similar interests, similar humor, similar ways of seeing the world. He lives in San Jose with his wife Lisa and their kids, and I drive up to visit every other month. His kids call me Uncle Desmond, and I love it. I coach his son's Little League team when I'm in town, take his daughter to the Science Museum, and have long conversations with Andrew about everything from work to politics to our complicated father. Hess filling a space I didn't know was empty. Andrew's mother, Diane, has been folded into our family gatherings. She's a warm, gracious woman who raised an incredible son despite being abandoned by her husband and paid off by his family. She doesn't hold grudges. She welcomed me and Emma with open arms, grateful that her son finally has siblings who want to know him. Last Thanksgiving, she sat at the table with all of us, including my parents. And there was a moment of profound awkwardness when Mom tried to apologize for what happened 30 years ago. Diane just smiled and said, "We all did what we thought we had to do. What matters is now." At work, I got promoted to senior director. I finally accepted the opportunities I'd been turning down, threw myself into projects I cared about, and proved what I'd always been capable of when I wasn't distracted by family obligations. My income increased by 45%. I have savings again, investments again, a retirement plan that actually makes sense. I'm building the life I put on hold for 8 years. And then there's Rachel, my colleague who noticed when I was falling apart, who made phone calls to find me an attorney, who sat with me in her apartment and told me I deserved better. We started having coffee after work. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became weekend trips. Last month, she moved in with me, her books filling my shelves, her paintings on my walls, her laugh filling the space. She knows the whole story. She doesn't try to fix it or minimize it. She just accepts me, past and all, and loves me anyway. One evening, about 6 months ago, I stood on my balcony looking out at the Los Angeles skyline, the city lights stretching to the horizon. I was thinking about that moment in Gerald's office, reading the will that shattered everything I thought I knew. At the time, it felt like the end of my world, the ultimate rejection, the final proof that I wasn't enough. But standing there on my balcony, my own place that I bought with my own money, knowing that Emma and Andrew were a phone call away, that Rachel was inside making dinner, that I'd finally built a life that was mine, I realized something. That will didn't destroy me. It freed me. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn love from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it in any healthy way. I'd twisted myself into knots, trying to be good enough, responsible enough, successful enough, hoping that eventually they'd see me the way they saw Brandon. But I was chasing something that didn't exist. Their love was conditional, transactional, based on meeting needs they couldn't even articulate. The day I read that will and walked out of Gerald's office, something broke inside me. The part that needed their approval, that craved their validation, that believed my worth was tied to their opinion. It shattered, and in the space it left, I finally had room to figure out who I was without them. Fighting back wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. It was about saying, I deserve better than this, and I won't accept less. It was about refusing to fund a life for people who'd written me out of theirs. It was about standing up for Emma, for Andrew, for the children our parents had discarded, or exploited, or manipulated. And in fighting back, I found something I'd never had before. Self-respect. The knowledge that I could set a boundary and maintain it, even when the entire family turned against me. The understanding that I didn't need their approval to have value. The peace that comes from living according to your own principles rather than someone else's expectations. My parents are different now. Therapy has softened them, and losing everything they built on false foundations has humbled them. They're not the people who wrote that will anymore. They're imperfect, still learning, still making mistakes, but they're trying. Our relationship will never be what it could have been if they'd loved me properly from the start. Too much damage has been done. But it's something. It's honest, and that's enough. I've learned that some relationships are worth fighting for, and some are worth walking away from. The trick is knowing which is which. For years, I fought to earn my parents' love by meeting their expectations, by being the good son, by sacrificing my own needs. That was the wrong fight. The right fight was standing up for myself, demanding to be treated with basic dignity, refusing to accept crumbs when I deserved a feast. Emma texted me that evening on the balcony. Just checking in. How are you doing? I replied. I'm good. Really good. She sent back a heart emoji. That's all I needed to hear. Andrew sent a photo a few minutes later. He was at a baseball game with his kids, all of them grinning at the camera, hot dogs in hand. The caption read, "Teaching them that family is who shows up, not who shares your blood." I smiled, saved the photo, and went inside to where Rachel was setting the table, humming to herself. This was my life now. Not perfect, not without scars, but mine. Built on my terms, filled with people who actually valued me, free from the weight of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. The greatest inheritance I received wasn't money or property. It was the courage to walk away from people who didn't value me and the wisdom to build a life with people who did. It was learning that your family doesn't define your worth. Your response to their treatment does. It was understanding that true strength isn't about earning approval from those who withhold it. It's about walking away with your dignity intact and refusing to settle for less than you deserve. I sleep peacefully now. No anxiety, no resentment, no anger keeping me awake at 3 in the morning. Just quiet satisfaction. I fought back. I won. And more importantly, I'm finally free. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through my windows, Rachel beside me, coffee brewing in the kitchen. I checked my phone, a calendar reminder. Dinner with Emma and Andrew. 7 o'clock. I smiled, dismissed the reminder, and got ready for work. Just another day. Just a life I built myself. Just peace. If you've ever found yourself giving everything to people who gave you nothing in return, I want you to know something. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You're not responsible for fixing people who broke themselves. You're not wrong for demanding basic respect and dignity from the people who should love you most. Walking away doesn't make you cruel. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. Refusing to accept crumbs doesn't make you ungrateful. It makes you strong. It makes you wise. It makes you someone who values themselves enough to demand better. Your worth isn't determined by other people's inability to see it. Your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to recognize it. And your life can be full and rich and meaningful without the approval of people who never deserved to give it. I thought my parents leaving everything to Brandon would destroy me. Instead, it set me free. It forced me to see the truth I'd been avoiding for 32 years. It gave me the push I needed to finally put myself first. And in doing so, I found the family I was always meant to have, the life I was always meant to live, and the peace I was always meant to feel. That's the lesson. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing. Sometimes the people who hurt you most do you the biggest favor. Sometimes losing everything shows you what really matters. And sometimes, you have to walk through fire to find out you were always strong enough to survive it. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from family members who didn't value you? How did you find the strength to set boundaries when everyone told you that you were wrong? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or struggled with people who took you for granted, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about finding strength in impossible situations. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to put themselves first. Your support means everything and helps these stories reach people who need them most. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and worth so much more than the people who failed to see it. Take care of yourselves, set those boundaries, and remember that the best revenge is a life well lived on your own terms. Until next time, this is Desmond, reminding you that family is who shows up, not who shares your blood.